Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily English Podcast. This is James, your host. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma, your co-host. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's always great to spend time with you on your English learning journey.
Absolutely, Emma. We love connecting with our listeners from all over the world. So let me ask you all a question. Have you ever sat down to read a book or study some notes and then realized that you can't remember anything you just read?
Oh, James, that happens to me all the time. Sometimes I read a whole page and then I think, wait, what did I just read? It's so frustrating.
Exactly. So you're not alone, Emma. And I bet a lot of our listeners have felt the same way. That's why today's topic is super useful. We're talking about how to read and take notes effectively. Whether you're a student, a professional, or just someone who loves learning, these skills are essential.
Yes, and not just for school or work. Even if you're reading for fun, like a novel or a magazine article, knowing how to understand and remember what you read makes the experience much better.
That's right. So in today's episode, we'll talk about why reading and note-taking are important, some common mistakes people make, and most importantly, practical tips you can use right away. Plus, we'll share our own stories, some examples, and even a few challenges for you to try.
And don't forget, we'll also highlight some useful vocabulary words, explain what they mean, and show you how to use them in real life.
So grab your notebook, or your phone, or just get comfy, and let's dive in.
Great! James, maybe we should start by sharing our own experiences. Do you remember the first time you realized you needed to take notes while reading?
Oh, yes. I remember it clearly. I was in high school reading this really thick history book. There was just so much information. I thought, I'll just remember it all? Ha! Big mistake. When the exam came, I couldn't remember most of what I read. After that, I started writing down key points and summaries as I read.
That's so relatable. For me, it was in university. I tried to just highlight everything, but then every page was yellow. I realized I wasn't really learning. I needed a better way to read and take notes, so I started experimenting with different techniques.
Yeah, highlighting everything is a common trap. And that brings us to our first subtopic. What does it mean to read effectively? Emma, how would you explain that?
Good question. To read effectively means more than just looking at words on a page. It's about understanding what you're reading, remembering the key information, and being able to use that knowledge later. It's active, not passive.
Exactly. It's like the difference between watching a movie with your friends but not really paying attention and watching it carefully because, you'll be asked questions about it later.
That's a great comparison. When you read effectively, you're not just passing time, you're making sure you really get the message.
So why do you think some people struggle with reading and remembering what they read?
I think there are a few reasons. Maybe they're distracted, or maybe they're trying to read too much at once. Sometimes people don't have a strategy. They just read and hope it sticks.
Yeah, or maybe they don't connect the new information to something they already know. That makes it harder for your brain to remember.
Or, like we mentioned before, just highlighting everything without really thinking about it. It feels like you're doing something, but you're not really processing the information.
Exactly, Emma. So let's talk about some effective reading strategies. One classic method is called SQ3R. Have you heard of it?
I have, but maybe you can explain it for our listeners just in case.
Sure. SQ3R stands for survey, question, read, recite, and review. Basically, first you survey the material, look at the headings, pictures, and summaries. Then you make questions about what you want to learn. Next, you read the section. After that, you recite or explain what you learned in your own words. Finally, you review the material to make sure you remember.
That's a great system. I especially like the question step. When you ask yourself questions, your brain gets more involved. It's like you're having a conversation with the book.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even asking, what is this section about? Or why is this important? Can help a lot.
Also, I think it helps to break reading into smaller chunks. Don't try to read too much at once, especially if the material is difficult. Take breaks and let your brain rest.
Great point. Let's move to note-taking. There are so many ways to take notes. Some people write long sentences, others draw diagrams, and some use bullet points. What's your favorite way, Emma?
I love using mind maps. I start with the main idea in the center and then draw branches for the subtopics. It helps me see the connections between ideas. Plus, it's fun to use different colors and shapes.
Oh, I like mind maps too. I usually use bullet points because it's fast and easy. Sometimes, if I'm reading a story, I'll write a short summary in my own words at the end of each chapter.
That's a great habit. Summarizing in your own words really shows you understand. And sometimes I record voice notes, especially when I'm out walking. I just talk into my phone and summarize what I read. It's less formal, but it works for me.
That's a cool idea. So, listeners, here's a mini challenge for you. After you finish reading something today, try to tell someone, maybe a friend or even just yourself, what it was about in your own words. It's a simple test to see if you really understood.
Or if you're shy, you can write it down or record a quick voice message. The important thing is to practice putting the ideas into your own language.
Now let's talk about some common mistakes with note-taking. Emma, you mentioned highlighting everything earlier. That's a big one.
Yes, I used to do that all the time. Another mistake is copying sentences word for word from the book. It feels safe, but you're not really thinking about the meaning.
Exactly. If you just copy, you're not changing the information, so your brain doesn't have to work. But if you write ideas in your own words, it helps you remember much better.
Also, some people write too much. You don't need to write every detail. Focus on the main ideas and the most important points.
On the other hand, writing too little can also be a problem. If your notes are just 1 or 2 words, you might forget what they mean later.
Finding the right balance is important. Here's a tip. After you finish taking notes, read them again the next day. If you still understand them, you're on the right track.
Great advice. Now let's talk about digital versus paper notes. Some people love writing by hand, others prefer typing on a laptop or tablet. What do you use, Emma?
I switch between both. When I'm studying at home, I use a notebook, but when I'm on the go, I use a note-taking app on my phone. I think both have advantages. Writing by hand helps me remember better, but digital notes are easy to organize and search.
Yeah, I'm the same. There's something nice about writing with a pen, but I love how digital notes never get lost. And you can copy-paste, add pictures, and even record audio.
Listeners, what about you? Do you prefer paper or digital notes? Take a moment to think about which works best for you and why.
Now let's talk about organization. Good notes are organized and easy to review later. Some people use headings and subheadings, others use symbols or colors. What helps you, Emma?
I love using colors. For example, I use blue for main ideas, green for details, and red for things I need to remember. Even just underlining or drawing boxes around important words makes a big difference.
I use little symbols like stars or arrows to highlight key points. It makes my notes more visual and interesting. And if I'm reading a textbook, I use sticky notes to add comments.
Sticky notes are so handy. You can move them around or use them as bookmarks. Plus, they're fun to use.
Let's give our listeners another challenge. Try using one new way to organize your notes this week. Maybe try colors, symbols, or even mind maps. See if it helps you remember better.
And don't be afraid to experiment. What works for one person might not work for another. The goal is to find what makes sense for you.
Now let's talk about reviewing notes. I know a lot of people take notes but then never look at them again. That's a waste, right?
Absolutely. Reviewing is key. Even just reading your notes again a few days later can help you remember much more. Some people like to rewrite their notes or make summary sheets before exams.
And there's something called spaced repetition. Basically, you review information at different times, like after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week. It helps move things from short-term to long-term memory.
I use that with vocabulary words. I write new words on flashcards and review them every few days. It really works.
Let's talk about reading different types of text. Reading a story is not the same as reading a science article, right?
Definitely, with stories, I focus on the main events and characters, but with science or history texts, I look for facts, dates, and definitions. Sometimes I make a timeline or a chart to organize the information.
Good idea. For news articles, I try to find the who, what, when, where, why, and how. That helps me get the main idea quickly. For English learners, it's important to read a variety of texts. It builds different skills.
And don't be afraid of difficult texts. If you don't understand everything, that's okay. Focus on the main ideas and look up new words if you need to.
Absolutely. Sometimes just reading for the gist, the general idea, is enough. You don't have to understand every single word.
That reminds me, James. How do you deal with new or difficult vocabulary when you're reading?
Great question. I try to guess the meaning from the context first. If I still don't get it, I look it up and write a simple definition. Sometimes I draw a picture or make a sentence with a new word.
I do something similar, and sometimes I ask a friend or teacher to explain. It's always good to use new words as soon as possible, so they stick in your memory.
Exactly. And that brings us to another tip. Don't just read passively. Interact with the text. Write notes in the margins. Ask questions. Make connections to your own life.
Yes. Reading is more fun when it's active. For example, if I'm reading about travel, I think about my own trips. If I'm reading about a problem, I ask myself how I would solve it.
It's also helpful to talk about what you read with others. Maybe join a book club or a study group. Discussing helps you understand ideas better and remember them longer.
And if you're learning English, reading out loud can improve your pronunciation and confidence. Even reading to your pet or a stuffed animal works.
Haha, I used to read to my dog when I was practicing speeches. He was a very patient listener.
That's so cute. And it shows that practice doesn't have to be serious or boring. Make it fun.
Another thing, don't be afraid to ask for help. If there's something you don't understand, ask a friend, a teacher, or even search online. There are so many resources these days.
That's true. And remember, everyone learns differently. Some people like reading quietly. Others need music or background noise. Some learn best in the morning. Others at night. Find your own style.
Let's talk about cultural differences for a minute. In some cultures, students are taught to memorize information exactly as written. In others, they're encouraged to use their own words. What have you noticed, Emma?
That's a good point. In my country, we were encouraged to summarize and explain things in our own way. But when I talk to friends from other places, they sometimes worry about making mistakes. They feel safer copying the book's words exactly.
Yeah, and in English-speaking countries, teachers usually prefer students to show their own understanding, not just memorize. It's okay to make mistakes as you learn.
So, to our listeners, be brave. Try to put things in your own words, even if it's not perfect. That's how you learn.
Exactly. Mistakes are just steps on the road to success. Now, before we wrap up, let's do a quick vocabulary highlight.
Great idea. So, here are some key words from today's episode.
First up, survey. In the reading context, it means to look quickly at the main parts of a text before reading carefully. For example, before I read the chapter, I surveyed the headings and pictures.
Next, summarize. This means to tell the main points in a short way. For example, after reading, I summarized the story in 3 sentences.
Another word, highlight. It means to mark important words, usually with a colored pen. For example, I highlight new vocabulary in yellow. The word comes from high and light, meaning to make something stand out.
Mind map is a diagram that shows ideas connected to a main topic. For example, I made a mind map to organize my notes about animals.
And spaced repetition. This is a way of learning where you review information at increasing intervals, like today, then after 2 days, then after 4 days, and so on.
Another word, margin. That's the empty space at the edge of a page. Some people write notes in the margin.
And finally, active reading. That means reading in a way where you ask questions, make notes, and really think about the text.
Those are all super useful words. And remember, you can practice them by making your own sentences.
So let's wrap up. We've talked about a lot today: how to read actively, different ways to take notes, organizing and reviewing your notes, and some cultural differences in learning styles.
Yes, and we hope you try some of the tips and challenges we shared. Remember, learning is a journey, and it's okay to try new things until you find what works for you.
Before we go, I want to share a quick story. Last year, I was learning a new language, and I found it really hard to remember new words, so I started making colorful flashcards and reviewing them every few days. It made a huge difference. Sometimes small changes can have a big effect.
That's inspiring, James. And to our listeners, don't worry if you forget sometimes. Just keep practicing. We're here to support you.
Thanks for joining us today on the Daily English Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or leave us a comment. We'd love to hear how you read and take notes.
Take care, everyone. Happy reading and happy learning. See you next time.
Bye for now.